There's a controversial medical diagnosis used around the country to explain the deaths of suspects in police custody.
It's called excited delirium, and it could become a defense in the trial of the former police officers charged with killing George Floyd.
Tonight, the Fox 9 investigators peel back the curtain, taking a look at the troubling science and its influence on police training. Here's Tom Lydon.
There is no surprise ending where George Floyd walks away. Only the excruciating 9 minutes he's on the asphalt. Officer Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck. But there is a crucial moment after George Floyd speaks what would be his final words.
You roll him on the side. Okay. I just worry about the delirium or whatever. Okay, that's false.
I recognize that agitation and that kind of ideation as being classic for excited delirium syndrome.
George Perry is a former federal prosecutor who once ran a special unit to investigate police excessive force cases. In a series of articles for the conservative magazine American Spectator, he argues George Floyd wasn't killed by police, that Floyd died from either a drug overdose or what's known as excited delirium.
It was perfectly clear to me that those police officers had not killed George Floyd. And as a matter of fact, they hadn't caused him any material injury whatsoever, and that he had died either outright from a drug overdose or from excited delirium syndrome.
Excited delirium is the medical diagnosis of someone who is hyper-aggressive and psychotic due to drug intoxication and/or mental illness, causing an adrenaline overdose, a dopamine rush that leads to cardiac arrest and often death. Police officers have also mentioned excited delirium in the deaths of Elijah McClain in Aurora, Colorado, and Manuel Ellis in Tacoma, Washington. And every cop, it seems, has a story to tell of someone who ran naked through the streets, psychotic or hallucinating, like this man in St. Paul a few years ago, who seemed to possess superhuman strength. But the two autopsies of George Floyd don't say a word about excited delirium. Hennepin County Medical Examiner Dr. Andrew Baker ruled Floyd's death a homicide, that Floyd's heart stopped while officers were restraining him and pressing on his neck. An autopsy commissioned by the Floyd family was more specific, that George Floyd died from traumatic asphyxia. Also known as positional asphyxia, it's what happens when a person is placed in a position making it difficult to breathe. It's common during what's known as prone restraint, when pressure is applied to someone on their stomach, compressing their lungs. But death can get complicated. The toxicology revealed Floyd's blood contained a small amount of methamphetamine, but a potentially fatal level of the drug fentanyl, 11 nanograms per milliliter. In a memo, prosecutors quote Dr. Baker as saying, "That's pretty high, a fatal level of fentanyl under normal circumstances." But there's no mention of whether Floyd may have developed a tolerance for opioid use.
Let me count 3 and I'm going in, please.
Floyd also had heart disease, was recovering from the coronavirus, and friends say he was claustrophobic. Perry argues that even by this point, before he was on the ground, George Floyd was a dead man walking.
All of that is just classic for excited delirium syndrome.
That's a shame because this is all under the guise of medical lingo, right? So excited delirium hides under the banner of medical words, but really has no scientific basis.
Dr. Altaf Sadi is a neurologist at Harvard Medical School and Mass General Hospital, who along with 2 of her colleagues wrote a piece for the Washington Post, claiming excited delirium is nothing more than junk science.
There is no pathological basis for it. There is no anatomic basis for it. There is no set criteria for even making the diagnosis. Most often this diagnosis is applied after the fact, not even in the moment that the force is being used. It's sort of an after the fact diagnosis that's applied.
Its origin story is found in the psychiatric wards of the 19th century, what became known as Bell's mania. By the mid-1980s, the term excited delirium was being used to explain the deaths of crack cocaine users in police custody. The diagnosis is not recognized by the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, or any classification of diseases or mental disorders. But it was given credibility by the American College of Emergency Physicians. In a 2009 white paper, a task force admits there's a lack of clear definition and cause. The exact pathophysiology remains unidentified, and no definitive diagnostic test. But none of that stops the group from arguing it's a real syndrome.
It's important to point out that the group of doctors who wrote that were really biased.
There are certainly potential conflicts of interest, like the Minnesota doctor who signed on to that white paper. Dr. Jeffrey Ho is an emergency room physician at HCMC and a Meeker County Sheriff's deputy. Dr. Ho was, until last year, a paid consultant for Axon Medical, makers of the Taser stun gun. The company has used excited delirium as a defense in dozens of wrongful death lawsuits where a taser was used. Dr. Ho was also the lead researcher in HCMC's controversial study of ketamine, a powerful sedative that, as the Star Tribune uncovered, Minneapolis police may have pressured paramedics into administering to control suspects. Dr. Ho declined to comment, but in a statement, Taser defends the diagnosis, saying, "We believe there is no longer a true debate among knowledgeable medical professionals on whether excited delirium syndrome is a valid diagnosis, as it has existed in the medical community for many years and has been the subject of hundreds, if not thousands, of studies and publications. Many of those studies, we should point out, paid for by Taser."
It kind of starts from a pro-law enforcement place anyway. This isn't your fault, officer. This is the subject's fault for doing things that place them in an excited delirium state, whether it's drugs or their own mental illness. Whatever it is, it's not your fault. It's their fault. It's something wrong with them.
Jeff Storms is one of the attorneys representing the family of George Floyd and is struck by similarities to another case he handled. David Smith should have been a warning, he says. 10 years ago at the downtown YMCA, he was acting unusual when he's approached by two Minneapolis police officers. They struggle to hold him down, taser him 5 times, and with a knee on his back, hold him down for 4.5 minutes until he became unresponsive. The cause of death? Positional asphyxia. The police officers never faced criminal charges and were never even interviewed by Internal Affairs. But Storm says the MPD administration always viewed the case as a cautionary tale of excited delirium, not positional asphyxia.
It then gets adopted into training, because I think if there's one thing we know, that a lot of time people want to hear from other people that support their beliefs. You're going to hire these trainers who provide you with training on excited delirium, which is training that tells you you're not at fault. I thought we accomplished something in our litigation. I thought they were going to train their officers so something like this never happened again.
In 2013, as part of a $3 million settlement with the family of David Smith, Minneapolis police agreed to increase their training about the dangers of positional asphyxia, including a video that would be shown to all police officers at roll call. Just one problem. That video is gone. Deleted, the city says, as part of its normal 7-year retention schedule. So the Fox 9 investigators decided to request all training materials not only about positional asphyxia, but also excited delirium. What we got was a mix of disturbing videos and questionable science.
Not moving! Oh! Get out!
The videos shown to Minneapolis police recruits show people high on bath salts, a drug known for producing extremely psychotic and often violent behavior.
This guy's like a ninja, man. Holy crap!
The training materials use degrading images to symbolize people with excited delirium. The character Fat Bastard, Jack Nicholson in The Shining, and the Incredible Hulk. It lays out the warning signs: someone who's naked, sweating, running wildly into traffic. Floyd, by the way, had none of these symptoms, and says it may take 5 to 8 people to restrain someone, recommending sedation with ketamine. The sooner given, the sooner it starts working. One slide shows a restrained suspect with an officer's knee on his neck, just like George Floyd, with a warning to place the subject in the recovery position, sitting up, to alleviate positional asphyxia. Minneapolis police tell us the authors of these training materials are either dead or retired, including another PowerPoint in 2013 that says excited delirium is the main culprit of arrest-related deaths. But the evidence is the exact opposite.
In fact, excited delirium death pretty much equals mechanical asphyxia or compression asphyxia.
Dr. Michael Freeman is a professor of forensic medicine and epidemiology. A few months ago, he published the most comprehensive research to date looking at the link between excited delirium and positional asphyxia in 168 documented cases.
Of those 168 cases, how many of those people just died from excited delirium without any restraint involved or tasers?
Well, as far as we can tell, none. There's absolutely nothing here in the data I've looked at that doesn't say they didn't all die of asphyxia.
In fact, Dr. Freeman's team couldn't find a single case of someone who died from excited delirium where some kind of restraint wasn't used. The result, he writes, is a kind of circular reasoning. Quote, the more likely it is that a death resulted from restraint, the more likely it is that the death will be attributed to excited delirium syndrome, which allows for the restraint to be ignored as a cause.
Excited delirium is a term that's used in most cases when there has been a high potential for positional asphyxia. Basically, you're taking one thing and calling it something else, which exculpates any kind of homicide.
For law enforcement, excited delirium has become a convenient way to explain in-custody deaths, to blame the victim and their drug use, rather than potentially deadly restraint. It will likely be an issue when the 4 officers who arrested George Floyd go on trial. But what if those officers had understood that excited delirium was just a theory? If their training had emphasized the real risk was having George Floyd restrained on his stomach, a knee on his neck. We know how it ends, but just for a moment, you can almost imagine George Floyd walking away.
We can no longer use bad science and junk science to support a position which is basically miscarrying justice on a regular basis.
For the Fox 9 investigators,